Hello, everyone, and Merry Christmas. Welcome to Uncivil Law. And for today's stream, we're going to do a little bit of a miracle on 34th Street. I'm sure many of you have seen the Christmas movie Miracle on 34th Street, both perhaps its original and its modern remakes. A classic story. A person claims they're Santa, and they get the court to recognize that there is, in fact, a Santa Claus under operative law. How exciting. So we might wonder, does this kind of thing happen in the real world? And sometimes it kind of does. So we're turning our attention to a case from 2002 from the great state of Ohio, in the state of Ohio versus Santa Claus. From the Warren Municipal Court of Trumbull County in Ohio, decided on July the 1st of 2002. A Christmas miracle in July. Christmas in July, indeed. Let us turn to the facts of this case. The defendant, hereinafter referred to as Santa Claus, stands charged with a first-degree misdemeanor violation of prohibited acts in that he did on the 20th day of December, delivering gifts, no doubt, displayed or possessed an identification card knowing the same to be fictitious, a fake ID. On the date in question, Santa was operating a motor vehicle that was involved in a minor fender bender. Unclear whether or not the motor vehicle was a sleigh and whether or not he's experimenting with alternative propulsion instead of reindeer. Unclear. But this one was a motorized vehicle. Following the accident in which Santa paid cash money on the spot to the individual for the car he had hit, so, not really dealing in insurance, just does straight cash. I like those gifts. Santa displayed his Ohio identification card to the patrolman, Eric Merkel. Okay, it is well settled that an individual is prohibited from possessing both an Ohio driver's license and an Ohio identification card at the same time. So like most states, you can get an ID, well, every state for that matter, you can get an ID card that is not a driver's license. Just for the purpose of identification. For example, voting, where voter ID is required. That would be an example. Or boarding a plane, or whatever, right? So you can get an ID card that is not a driver's license, but many states prohibit you from having both. So you can have one or the other, and Ohio is one such state. And in this particular state, Santa is an Ohio licensed driver who does not have an Ohio identification card. Santa is not an Ohio licensed driver who does have an Ohio identification card. Because Santa is a licensed Ohio driver, so apparently he chose to get his sleigh registered in Ohio. I mean, that's kind of North Pole adjacent, I guess. The state charged him with having a fictitious identity card because he has an Ohio driver's license that says his name is Santa. Okay? State Exhibit A is a copy of Santa's December application for the Ohio identification card. Santa's Ohio identification card expires on December the 25th of 2003. Exhibit A contains a box in wherein the applicant, Santa, checked the box he does not possess a current driver's license. On October the 25th of 2002, a hearing was held pursuant to Santa's motion to dismiss, filed April the 12th, and the state responded thereto. No witnesses testified, but Santa produced 8 documents, maybe each one produced by a reindeer. Who can say? 8 documents, 8 reindeer, a coincidence? I think not. But he produced 8 documents in support of his oral argument that were marked and admitted without objection as court exhibits. Due to the nature of the charge and the facts and circumstances at issue, the court finds the exhibits in question are quite relevant. So we're going to go through every single document that was presented in this case. Fantastic. Exhibit AA is a copy of a certificate of birth for one Santa Claus born at the North Pole December 25th in the year 383 AD to Mrs. Claus and Holly Noel with Dr. Snowflake attending. The man has a birth certificate from the North Pole and he's presenting it as evidence in court. Great. Moving on. Exhibit BB provides copies of the Ohio identification card with photos for Santa for the years 1996 and 1997 issued to Santa Claus by the state of Ohio. The state of Ohio issued him an ID in the name Santa Claus. with his listed residence on the ID as 1 Noel Drive, North Pole, Ohio, 44481, as well as a copy of his AAA temporary membership card for the year 1995. Santa swears by AAA in case he gets a breakdown. It must be good enough for the rest of us. Exhibit CC contains copies of Ohio identification cards with photos of Santa for the year 1985 to 1990 and 1988 to 1992, issued to Santa Claus by the state of Ohio, indicating his residence at 1 Noel Drive, North Pole, USA. North Pole might be in the USA. No particular state, though, as well as a copy of a certificate of title issued to Santa Claus on December 17th, 1987 by the state of Ohio for one 1965 Volkswagen two-door sedan, presumably a Beetle, although unspecified. Exhibit DD contains copies of Ohio identification cards with photos of Santa for the years 1982 to 1986 and 1985 to 1988, issued to Santa Claus by the state of Ohio, indicating his residence at 1 Noel Drive, North Pole, USA, as well as a copy of a blank check, number 117, on the account of Santa Claus and Mrs. Santa Claus with the Second National Bank of Warren. He has a bank account, people, at the Second National Bank of Warren. Exhibit EE is an actual vehicle registration issued to Santa Claus for $60.50 on October the 31st, 1992 by the state of Ohio for the said 1965 Volkswagen mentioned in Exhibit CC. Again, presumably a Beetle. Exhibit FF is an actual vehicle registration issued to Santa Claus for $56.75 on December the 11th, 1989 by the state of Ohio for 1965 Volkswagen mentioned in Exhibit CC. Exhibit GG is an actual vehicle registration expiration notice for the vehicle listed in Exhibit FF mailed to Santa Claus by the state of Ohio for the 1965 Volkswagen. Exhibit HH is an actual vehicle registration issued to Santa Claus for $58.15 on December the 26th of 2001 by the state of Ohio for that 1965 Volkswagen mentioned in Exhibit CC. Perhaps the sleigh is now a Volkswagen. Unclear. What we have is many, many exhibits issued by the state of Ohio to Santa Claus. That's what we've got. In essence, this case reveals a situation where an individual is going by more than one name. It has long been established in Ohio that a person may change his name or her name either by petition by the probate court or by the simple expedience of adopting and using a new one. So you can get it changed by the probate court if you want it like for legal documents, or you can just call yourself something. You can just call yourself by a different name. That's something you can just do. Both procedures are equally valid in the eyes of the law. A person may change his name at any time, or even use several different names, so long as they don't do so for fraudulent purposes, like to avoid a debt for something, or pretend to be someone else for the purpose of stealing their fame, or whatever. But you can literally call yourself anything you want, and that's legal as far as Ohio is concerned. That's great. There can be no doubt, based on the aforementioned exhibits, that Santa and the Bureau of Motor Vehicles have a solid and ongoing relationship for 20 years. Santa has applied for and issued numerous state photo identification cards, certificates of title, and applications for vehicle registration. The Ohio Supreme Court's decision in State versus Harshmail is dispositive. In Hashmail, the Supreme Court of Ohio interpreted the former code, which forbade the use in an application for a motor vehicle, a certificate for a false or fictitious name. The court has held that the statutory words use false or fictitious name necessarily refer to the name for a fraudulent purpose. So it is not false or fictitious according to the Ohio Supreme Court unless it is for fraud. It is not a false name unless it is for the purpose of fraud. Otherwise, it's just your name. That's what they call you, or what you call yourself, more to the point. In this case, there is no evidence that Santa adopted his name for the purpose of avoiding debt or the payment of taxes. To the contrary, Santa routinely pays, and the state of Ohio accepts his tax and registration fees under the name of Santa for many years. Consequently, Santa's use of his application can in no sense be viewed as fraudulent. The court understands the state's position in this matter in light of the tragedies of September 11th. The citizens of Ohio should be more appreciative of the tight ship under which the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicle operates. This state's BMV requires stringent forms of identification before it issues any form of official identification. Without such strict efforts on the BMV's part, it would be much easier for would-be terrorists or criminals to obtain much sought-after fraudulent identification that could much more easily enable them to act out their ghastly plans of skullduggery. This might be the first time I've ever heard that terrorism referred to as skullduggery. That is an interesting juxtaposition of terms. If you said to me, what is the synonym for terrorism? Skullduggery would not be my first choice, but apparently that's what the court is going with. Pressing on. As this court is continuously made more aware of the excellent efforts, you can just taste the sarcasm on the page. You can taste the sarcasm. It's great. As well, this court is continuously made aware of the excellent efforts of the Warren Police Department in enforcing the traffic and criminal laws and ordinances of the state and city. The court is taking the piss, as the Irish would say. In short, this court's dilemma is whether Santa's act of displaying this identification card under these circumstances and with this history violated the law. To wit, was the identification card fictitious? Webster's 7th New Collegiate Dictionary defines fictitious. Its analysis includes the words as synonyms, a comparison with fabulous, legendary, mythical, and apocryphal. Fabulous stresses the marvelous or incredible character of something without distinctly implying impossibility or actual non-existence. Legendary suggests an elaboration of invented details and distortion of historical facts produced by popular tradition. Mythical implies a purely fantastical or fanciful explanation of facts or the creation of beings and events out of imagination. Apocryphal implies an unknown or dubious source or origin for an account circulated as true or genuine. Fictitious implies fabrication and suggests artificiality or contrivance more than deliberate falsification or deception. Had Santa been charged with being fabulous, legendary, mythical, or apocryphal, he might well be guilty and facing up to 180 days in jail and a $1,000 fine. However, to sustain the burden of going forward, the state must make a showing that Santa knowingly displayed an identification card that was fictitious. This, the state has not done. The fact that Santa has an ongoing relationship for 20 years with the BMV is not indicative of artificiality or contrivance. For, in fact, under the publicly held records of the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles, Santa has been a real person since as early as 1982. By way of analogy, this court has stated that a fictitious name means a name used in business or trade that is fictitious, and the user has not registered or is not entitled to use as a trade name. In the case at bar, Santa has a registered name with the BMV since 1982. The court finds that Santa's act of displaying his Ohio identification card to the officer can in no way be construed as a violation of law. The court grants Santa's motion. The case is dismissed, and it is so ordered. Case dismissed. Santa wins. So yes, the miracle on 34th Street kind of thing does occasionally happen in the real world. Santa has been recognized as a real person, at least by Ohio, for at least 20 years as of the time of this case, with vehicle registration records and identification records and paying tax and everything else. Santa Claus is real, and so his ID was not fictitious. It is really him. Thus, it is a Christmas miracle. And with that, my friends, I bring us to the end of the case. I wish you the very most merry of Christmas and wish you and yours a happy New Year. And I hope that you will have a great one celebrating this time of Yule. Take a moment to reflect upon the grace and good fortune that you've had in your life. Take a moment to think about the good fortune that you've had compared to so much of the world. We've all been blessed in our many, many ways. Despite the tragedy of our own lives, if you are watching this, you are better off than many people in the world who don't have that capability. And so it is a good time to remind ourselves of all the fortunes that we do have in our world, despite all the tragedies that also befall us. So I hope you have a great and wonderful, prosperous new year. Until next time, I've been Uncivil Law, and remember to keep it uncivil out there. Merry Christmas.